This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
2025, are you ready to rock? Dave's Killer Bread is ready to rock 2025 and your reset this January with killer taste, killer nutrition, and a killer sweepstakes to win a VIP concert prize pack with round-trip airfare, luxury hotel stay, and much more. Text RESET to 73876 and enter for a chance to win. Dave's Killer Bread. Bread amplified. No purchase necessary. Visit daveskillerbread.com/reset for details.
Welcome back live to Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Tonight we're going to talk about leadership. We're going to talk about what it means, the definition of it. And we're not just talking about it in a small section of society. We're going to talk broadly about leadership, as well as leadership in the corporate world, and as well as world leaders. And joining me tonight on Perspectives is Suzi Skinner. Suzi Skinner is the top-notch leadership expert when it comes to understanding leadership, when it comes to understanding what it means to be a leader, but better yet, some of the misnomers from the past and some of the things that we need to change to make better leaders in the future. Suzi, thanks so much for joining us on Perspectives. I'm so glad to have you.
Oh, Ashley, thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here with you.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much. So let's talk about leadership. First off, I think a lot of our listeners would like to know one thing. What does it mean? I know this is a big question. What does it mean to really be a leader?
Yeah, I love that question, Ashley, and I think it gets to the heart of some of the challenges that you've alluded to already. So there would be quite literally thousands of definitions of leadership out there, whether it's in the corporate world or the leadership literature itself. And what's really interesting about that is that no one really agrees on what leadership actually is. How do you define it? And if we can't define it, then how do we understand, what good leadership and what poor leadership looks like, as an example. But I think one of the things that I have landed on in my research and my practice is that if you kind of get beneath all of the leadership models that are out there, all of the approaches that are in, the leadership books and things that various people have come up with, they all have at their heart a commonality, which is that leadership is fundamentally the positive influence on others. And, what's challenging about that, Ashley, is that when you talk to individuals about leadership being a positive influence, it brings up a whole lot of personal stuff for people around what their own internal models of leadership are and what experience they've had of leadership themselves. So, it sort of highlights that we have work to do, I think, in redefining leadership in that much more accessible way.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, because I think that it becomes kind of skewed for people, because I think it's the way we're raised. I feel like it's parenting, it's environment, it's what we see. Politics can play some part in that. In the business world, how mom or dad, what kind of business they worked on, what kind of stuff did they do. I mean, even my mom, for example, just a small little portion of it. My mom was a principal, and she's still with us, but she ran a school district, ended up being a superintendent of schools. And I mean, she was in a career that was mostly dominated by women as far as teachers, but when it came to the topper echelon as far as the principals, the assistant superintendents of school, that was all really a partisanship of mostly men. And so my mom actually kind of redefined herself, and I see that even in politics today, where you see women that seem, I don't know if it's even feminine anymore, or if they had to define themselves in a certain social realm.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So what we know, and you're absolutely right, is that we've actually made huge advances in terms of women in leadership and, really moving people across different professions, different, political spheres, the whole thing. We've seen a much greater representation of women. But what you're talking about is what I call like the final frontier, which is that it really doesn't matter what social, political, or organizational sphere we're talking about. When you get to those very, very senior levels, those kind of elite leadership positions, they are still very much dominated by men. And I love that example that you gave with your mum, because the challenge becomes, how do we notice those definitions of leadership, very masculine definitions of leadership, and when you're having to work in those settings, how do you stay true to your own definition of leadership? How do you manage those boundaries, but at the same time display a leadership style that is going to be recognized? And that is a quandary that many, many people face. So I don't think there's any one answer, but actually you have hit on a very powerful point that you said your mother did, which is that actually high performers, people that are really clear and enjoy career success, actually have defined leadership for themselves. So in other words, they've been able to notice the dynamics and really decide how they're going to interact and what are the things, the principles, the beliefs, the value system, the style that best represents who they are in that environment. So, that's what I call this clarity around their leader identity, which is not about skills and aspirational sort of stuff, but it's about, well, who am I and who am I being in this environment right now? So that's kind of the individual response, I think, to the challenge. But you've also highlighted the fact that even how we think about leadership, particularly in the last 15 years, is totally changing, right? We are really moving away from the hierarchical definitions and the whole command and control mindset that has, dominated leadership for many, many decades. And we're moving into this space of encouraging and empowering people at every level. And what comes...
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
At Kroger Pharmacy, care is what's most convenient for you. Care is being here when you need us. We're open evenings and weekends. Care is helping you save more. Most insurance plans and discount cards are accepted at your local Kroger Pharmacy. Care is saving you time by managing your prescriptions online. You can request refills, check order status, and more. Care is convenience that works for everyone. Kroger Health, a world of care is in store. Services and availability vary by location. Age and other restrictions may apply. For coverage, consult your health insurance company. Visit the pharmacy or our site for details.
With that, I'm hoping is a far more accessible definition of leadership, a far more kind of open way of thinking about leadership as being a really individual process, as long as that person is having a positive influence on the people around them.
I agree with that. And it's interesting because, Suzi, it's funny. Everybody asks me, they're like, do you have any time, during the week left to do anything? And I said, not really, but I just took on 3 interns that I'm mentoring. And they're like, what? I said, yeah, I've taken on 3 interns that I'm mentoring, 2 16-year-olds and 1 17-year-old. And they actually bus them to the studio. And I've been teaching them how to edit and shoot film and shoot video and what the message is and psychological response to certain things. And it's interesting because these same students interned last year, and they said, hey, your style is completely different from what we're used to. And I said, explain. And they said, we love it because you let us do what we should do to explore. You encourage us, and at the same time, there's an open, truthful dialogue. It's not just you telling us what to do, and then we just go do that. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Whatever. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about, is like real leaders impart knowledge and encourage people to find their true self, their authentic self, outside of do as I say, not as I do, sometimes mentality that we see in other types of leadership models.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what's really important in that process is that those leaders like you, Ashley, are not threatened by sharing leadership with others. So in other words, they have such a good clarity around their own leader identity that part of that leader identity is involved in actually bringing on and tapping into the leadership potential of others. And I think that's the future. It's the future because we're facing so much disengagement in organizations around the world. The statistics are, pretty scary. I think somewhere along the lines of 70% of employees are actively or currently disengaged in their role. I mean, it's huge. And I think part of that is because we live in this knowledge age where information is so accessible, and you can Google leadership and land on any kind of model that appeals to you. Yet when people get back into the system that they work within, they're still fairly disempowered in terms of really bringing that leadership to life, their own unique, take on leadership. So I think we're at a real crossroads. And I think the other thing that's happening is that, we hear about it all the time, Ashley, that people are going through change. There's so much change in our political systems. There's so much change in our technology, the way that we work, the way that organizations are coming together. And the old command and control system relies on the people at the top to have all the answers. It's sort of empowering them and potentially disempowering the rest. And, that model just doesn't cut it anymore, because the load of change and complexity means that we just can't rely on people at the top to have all the answers. You know what I mean? So in other words, really smart leaders are going, actually, we're in this complex, this VUCA world, this constant change, and actually I need to be tapping into the leadership potential of everyone, not just people in so-called positions of authority.
That's interesting, because you talked about how there's 70% disengagement in roles at work. And I was wondering, if that's the case and people are, I believe there's an awakening. I believe people are becoming more empowered. I would have to say that I think that people are, I guess, learning and communicating more authentically. How do we take that open dialogue that people seem safe to do in their personal life? How do we engage that open dialogue where we allow people to express their own form of leadership within the work system?
And, I think that is a question that no one's got 100% right yet, Ashley, but I can tell you that one of the mechanisms that we know works is to start to empower people with insight into the system to start off with, to actually give them a perspective that this is the kind of hierarchical nature of how we work. and to validate that on the one hand, you actually do need hierarchy, right? You need hierarchy in terms of decision making and governance and all of those sorts of things. But it shouldn't come at the expense of people's potential, of not being able to see that potential, or as you say, to help them realize it in their professional lives. So I think one of the first steps is to just give people a perspective that this is the challenge, right? That even within that system, we need to find new and different ways to encourage and empower the people around us. And, you know, we've been doing this for a number of years now, and every team, every organization is different, but there are some fundamental principles, right? Really basic stuff that we hear time and time again, and that can be things like just opening up the dialogue. You know, one woman, very senior role, just talked about making an effort of not only, you know, in the sort of decision making for her division, not only sort of talking to her regular stakeholders, but walking the floor, literally going outside of the kind of the realms of her team and asking people from different backgrounds, different age groups, you know, really kind of opening up a dialogue which is about seeking different perspectives. Because what we know is that when people feel like they're heard, then that goes a long way to helping them feel empowered, and they're more likely to step into that. So I think it's about helping organizations and
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
2025, are you ready to rock? Dave's Killer Bread is ready to rock 2025 and your reset this January with Killer Taste, Killer Nutrition, and a killer sweepstakes to win a VIP concert prize pack with round-trip airfare, luxury hotel stay, and much more. Text RESET to 73876 and enter for a chance to win Dave's Killer Bread. Bread amplified. No purchase necessary. Visit daveskillerbread.com/reset for details.
it doesn't matter if it's a corporate organization or a political one or a social one, but just helping them create the space to tap into that potential, to ask questions that they're not asking. And I loved your example, Ashley, to just help them lead in a way that is more curious, more open to challenging their own perspectives and the way things have always been done.
You know, I love that, because when we challenge ourselves, and, you know, that's with every part in life. You know, what I've realized is that when we challenge ourselves on a spiritual level, we challenge ourselves on a mental level, we challenge ourselves on an emotional level, you know, we're able to see more clearly, gain more clarity, understand ourselves to a fuller degree, be able to, you know, embark on that. I guess I would call it kind of like a meditation, but embark on it on a waltz, basically, with your authentic self, and be able to understand that dialogue between yourself and understand where that comes from. And I feel that leadership, like you say, and what I agree with, is people that actually influence in a positive manner, but people that influence in a truthful manner. And
Yeah.
I feel that's so inherent. And I wonder... you know, so we talk about it kind of in the corporate scenario. Let's take it to even a bigger scenario. Let's talk about it maybe in governments and political systems. You know, you have kids that are in high school, that are in college, that, you know, might want to be in the government, think about being in government, but they see all this stuff going all the time in every country. It's not just one country. It's not just, you know, it's not just in the United States. It's not just in your country of Australia. It's in various countries. It's all over the world. And there's a bit of, in some countries, some women probably cannot maybe participate as much in government as in other countries. But you see children kind of and kids getting a little disheartened. And you even see general public of any age getting disheartened because they feel that there is no voice, that there's very little power as the individual, and that they wonder if there will ever be any really true leadership.
Yeah, look, I think that's absolutely right. And, you know, that's what the whole media talks about, this sort of crisis in leadership, because they're so short-term focused and, you know, not looking after anything other than potentially self-interest. So it is a massive challenge. One of the things that we have noticed is that when we talk to the younger generation, so we've been running our leader identity programs in schools, so 16-year-old, 17-year-old young people, and when you start to talk to them about, you know, let's open up leadership, let's notice the limitations and let's notice the shortcomings, and at the same time, let's talk about how you can, as an individual, transcend those or ignore those and take ownership for your own leader approach. It's amazing, actually. I mean, it really is amazing. We think about leadership as always being positional and lots of experience, and you know, and it's an absolute fallacy. We've had the most incredible dialogue with 16-year-old girls who are really clear about what they stand for, are really clear about the things that they believe in, are really passionate about where they're having a positive influence. And I think part of our opportunity is to have more of that dialogue, right? To really make sure that kind of innate strength, that leadership quality that's basically within everyone, if you're willing to take ownership for it, is, you know, how do we open that up and ensure that that's not being beaten out of people, right? And I think your point about politics and you know, that impact that it can have on you know, the lack of role models, you know, it makes that task harder. But part of the message has to be that people, you know, one answer is that people can take ownership for their own and be their own role model, if that makes sense. So it's all about this sort of self-leadership piece, which I think that we, you know, we have a responsibility to continue that dialogue and to reinforce it with the people coming through. So that's one idea.
You know, I think it's interesting with role models. You know, when I was younger, when I was growing up, adults would ask me, because I was always the entertaining child. You know, my mother was always had her friends over, and I was the one over there making the drinks at the bar for them, and like doing a little like I don't know, like a little ballet or tap jazz routine to entertain everybody, or some sort of comic relief. But I remember, like, all the adults would ask me, "Hey, you know, who's your role model?" And I would respond back with, "What do you mean?" And they'd be like,
Yeah.
"Who's your role model?" I don't really have one. And
Yeah.
and I really think that as I got older, I realized that it was within me to try to figure that out.
That's right. That's exactly right. You know, we often talk about, you know, lack of role models, and, you know, it's sort of this kind of, if it's not there on the outside, then it's very difficult to achieve. But it totally dismisses that awareness that actually the qualities are within you already, right? Actually, why don't we change the dialogue and really help people identify what they are? I mean, we take some of our people through really simple reflections, but, you know, back to your example, Ashley, of, you know, being behind the bar and, you know, doing the entertaining, that was having a really positive influence on people, right?
I hope so.
Yeah. So when you connect people back to that and you sort of say to them, look, when you were in, you know, your younger years as a child, you didn't have positional authority, you didn't have a title, but I guarantee you were having a positive influence on others. What were you doing? And in that, what were you doing? The stories that people tell reconnects them to the most beautiful parts of who they are, right? Their warmth, their generosity, their kindness. It's different to everyone. But the point is that I think we get so caught up in this 21st century of ours of thinking about these aspirational things that we have to become and these behaviors that we have to learn. And, that's all very real, that we've always got to be open to learning. But I think at the same time, we're missing this beautiful richness, which is, what are the qualities you already have? Who are you being when you are at your most powerful, and not in a hierarchical point of view, but in that influencing point of view. And honestly, Ashley, we've had grown men, really emotional about their, and forgetting that was, a core part of their identity, right? Because we tend to gloss over it and we box ourselves into a role or a title or a position or what have you. And I think that's part of the redefining of leadership that we have, I think, available to us.
That's awesome, because I remember we did an exercise. Okay, so for everybody listening, the reason why and how I met Suzi, which is so amazing, is I attended, I guess it was a leadership, coaching and leadership and healthcare conference back early in September at the Institute of Coaching affiliated with the Moline Hospital, which was really cool. And tell us about what you did, because I remember you asked us. What were we supposed to think about? Think about like our childhood, or
yeah.
Can you tell our listeners a little bit more, because it really it was very interesting, because it brought me back to a time where I was giving advice to my babysitter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. I remember that story, which I thought was a beautiful. And there was you, right, with that wisdom at such a young age, right? Isn't that a beautiful thing? And here you are now today, still using that wisdom and sharing it with others, Ashley. It's a beautiful thing. So look, that exercise that we did as part of the conference was as simple as just asking everyone, and I think we had a few hundred in the room, to really just kind of park who they are today and how they sort of see themselves in terms of their job or not their job, or, what they're doing. But actually just to think back to being, 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, whatever kind of resonated with them, and think about what they were doing on a day-to-day basis that was having a positive influence on others, right? That was not about changing the world or doing something incredibly remarkable that is alienating for everybody else to hear, but quite literally just what were the simple things that you were doing, because that's where your identity shines through, right? Because that's who you're being. And in that session, I mean, isn't it interesting, actually, that we, some people really struggle to do that. They're like, oh, I can't think of anything, I really wasn't doing anything, rah, rah, rah. But then actually when stories start being shared, like you shared your story, and then a couple of others shared different things that they were doing about, starting work, their own jobs at a really young age, and they realized that was, this whole autonomy and being entrepreneurial was showing up way back then. That it actually sparks in everyone else. It's like, oh, yeah, I do remember that, as a 10-year-old, my favorite thing was to bake a cake for my family, and that was about bringing people together and generosity and having fun. So I think it's this, we don't often, particularly in leadership, we never look backwards. We look at strengths, we look at personality, we look at those things, but we very rarely tell stories about the things that have formed us, the things that have shaped who we are and how we see ourselves and how we think about leadership. And I think that it's a wonderful, I always think it's a wonderful thing to experience when you hear those stories.
I thought it was amazing, Suzi, because it connected me back as a child, and it was pretty cool, and it actually resonated with what I do now, which is really cool.
Yeah, I love that you've made that connection. And do you get that? Most people do, right? It's sort of like this aha moment where it's like, okay, so if autonomy and making my own decisions was so important to me back then, no wonder I'm in this entrepreneurial business and I've gone out on my own, because actually that's just a core part of who I am. And I think that those sorts of connections just help people make sense of who they're already being and taking ownership for that in a really positive way. And I think that's a great thing.
I love it. I love it, and I learned a lot from it. And I took a lot from it, and even when I'm working and mentoring with these kids, I don't want to use the word children. When we're mentoring these kids, and it's so awesome. And it's neat because when you ask them stuff about their childhood and stuff like that, and kind of find out those types of things, it's like the first thing that we all talk about is there's nothing there, it's no big deal. And then you give them just a little more time, and they start realizing there's a lot there, and it really directly relates to what's going on. I wanted to ask you one more question before I find out exactly what you're working on now. But I wanted to ask you, what do you think? I think a lot of times as women, and I went through this a few years ago, I had a difficult time in showing emotion. And it wasn't until somebody told me, it's okay to shed a tear. It's okay to show a little bit of emotion when you're dealing with serious things, because it doesn't show weakness. It actually shows not only compassion, but it shows where you stand, but it's not weak. And what kind of advice would you give to listeners? And I think this goes across the board, both men and women. Is it okay to show emotion in certain occasions? And can that also translate as a leader as well?
Look, absolutely. And I think that you're highlighting this authenticity piece about leadership that we've been missing. That, when we define leadership on very masculine terms, which has been our history, that you have to be, assertive and self-promoting and lead from the front and all those sorts of things, there isn't room for the other side that exists in all of us, which is the caring, the kind, the generous. So I think that that's part of the shift that people are making.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. When you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself, talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
At Kroger, an annual Boost membership just got even better. Now you can choose from Disney Plus with ads, Hulu with ads, or ESPN Plus on us when you sign up. Plus, enjoy unlimited free delivery, double fuel points, exclusive offers, and free items. Sign up for a Boost membership today. It's an easier way to save, including new streaming options to relax with while we deliver your groceries. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
And, some of the leadership literature talks about the feminization of leadership, that we've been so masculine focused in leadership, and now it's becoming a lot more balanced. And certainly from my perspective, I think, the term I like to use is just balance. What we're looking for is to people to bring all of themselves to their leadership role or opportunities, and not suppress the sides of you that actually make you who you are. So I think the authenticity piece is a hugely important and also challenging piece to navigate, right? Because we can also talk to people about being more authentic and bringing that kind of gentler self to the table. We also have to be mindful that might be in an environment that doesn't recognize that or validate that. So it can be a minefield. But if you looked at globally, the shift is absolutely a shift that is happening. And certainly in some areas, it's a shift that's already happened, that people are expected to be far more candid and honest and open about who they are and what's important. So, I think we're still on a journey with that, but it's absolutely, and it's what sustains people, Ashley. You know that. You know that when you are your most authentic self and you're able to share what's worrying you or what's upsetting you, it's just a signal to others that this is very important to you. This is important information that needs to be understood. And it helps you as the leader, actually sustain you in that role rather than trying to suppress things that aren't seen as acceptable. So I think it's a hugely important part of the puzzle.
I do too. And I'm kind of interested. Well, I'm not kind of interested. I'm really interested because last time I saw you was up in Boston, and I know you spent a lot of time lecturing and speaking to various groups and hospitals and organizations. What are you working on right now?
So right now, I've just completed my book. So the book is called Build Your Leader Identity. And then the subtitle is A Practical Guide to Leading Authentically from Any Position. So the thing that I have been very passionate about, actually, is that when it comes to leadership, we can be really territorial about our intellectual property, right? It's like, I'm not going to share this because somebody else might take it and rah, rah, rah. And actually, I've been very intentional in wanting to share. The book is actually a whole lot of exercises that someone at 15 or 50 can pick up and do the reflections and answer the questions and start to reconnect or refine what leadership is to them and who they are as a leader. Because I fundamentally believe that, the qualities exist in everyone and the opportunity is for us to help people take ownership for that. So that is my number one priority. I'm also in the middle of a PhD. I'm totally fascinated with how leaders are formed. So we talk about leader identity being that sort of foundation piece that we've got to have clarity in what we stand for. But there's this whole other piece around what are the things that enable us as leaders and what are the things that derail us. Lots of literature on, the differences for men and women, but it's important we recognize that everyone goes through this forming process around leadership, and it's not something that you just do early in your career, but it's something that you do over and over again as environments change, roles change, your situation and life circumstances change. So that's part of more research that I'm doing as well.
That's awesome. I see, I have a lot of clients that come in, and one of their biggest issues is dealing with, somebody at work that's very territorial.
Yeah. Look, yeah. And isn't that interesting? And part of our challenge is to notice that and to navigate that, right? And I think, gosh, the risk is that we start to do that ourselves. We take that on and do it in response. It's the hardest work to not do that. But I think it's really important that is part of what people share, right? So interesting times.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And it's interesting how you can lead. And I would love to get a copy of the book, Build Your Leader Identity. And I'd like to have you back on Perspectives to discuss that, because I think that you can lead from any angle you're at. And I feel that sometimes people have a tendency of just like, well, I'll just, I'm over here, I don't have any, I'm not in a leadership role, but they don't realize who's really watching, and a lot of people don't realize who's watching them for their next move. They don't even know because they're not seeing who's paying attention to what they're doing.
Absolutely. And, they don't even have to be in an organization, right? They could be running their own business from home, right? But I'm sure if you spent time with them, it'd be very clear what positive influence they are having. But it's about helping them take ownership for that. So that's absolutely the case, Ashley. It's part of the reason I'm so passionate about the book is because people don't see leadership as a part of themselves. They see it as belonging to others. And actually, that's the mindset that I want to challenge, because leadership itself, as we've talked about, is in a crisis. It needs to change. We need better leaders. And I think part of that is empowering everyone to see who they are as a leader and to have that positive influence. So I'd be delighted to talk you through the exercises in the book another time and to really get into some detail around that, because I think it's accessible if someone's willing to do the work, to do the reflection, and to really think differently and challenge their mindset.
I love it. I'm very interested, and I'm actually going to share a lot of that with not only the kids that I'm mentoring, but also people that I come into contact on a daily basis, dealing with stations. And for a lot of people that aren't in the industry, in the radio industry, it can be kind of a minefield to navigate and deal with certain things. And it's a high pressure area, but at the same point in time, I think that if everybody realized to some degree that, their thoughts are cared about, their leadership role is accepted, that would be awesome. Two lasting words or one lasting word for our listening audience, Suzi.
Um,
I always put people on the spot like this. You see what I'm saying? I don't mean to do this, but I figured, you got you just one thing that maybe people can resonate with at any part of life, whether you are a stay-at-home mom, whether you work a 90-hour job, whether you created your own company, you're doing something completely out of the blue that you got nobody to look to but yourself to figure this out. Is there, one thing that you can say that would really help the listeners out?
Yes, look, I think that if you've been listening to this and sort of thinking, oh, this doesn't apply to me, leadership is not who you are, I would just encourage you to take a moment and maybe just reassess that and just give yourself permission to jot down on a piece of paper, what are the things that you're doing when you are having a positive influence? How would you describe that part of yourself? And to not judge yourself. Don't feel like you're not a leader and therefore this is not relevant. Actually, what we know is that this is a journey, and everyone goes through stages of not feeling like a leader and then kind of feeling like a leader and then maybe not feeling like a leader. I mean, it's just that whole sort of fluid process of leadership that is common to everyone. And so I would just encourage listeners to do some reflection and maybe give themselves permission to have a look at that sort of thing.
That's awesome. That's lovely, Suzi. And I look forward to having you back on Perspectives. And I really appreciate, because you have all these amazing golden nuggets of well, I hate to use I can't use a better word, perspectives, really. And it's just you have so much of a wealth of knowledge that our listeners can really attune to. And I really appreciate you coming on. And thank you so much.
Oh, Ashley, thank you so much. And you're a wonderful interviewer. I've totally enjoyed the process. So thanks so much.
Leadership is an important, not only concept, but I believe more so that leadership is a lifestyle. I believe that the more authentic you are, the more peacefully authentic, the more positive influence that you provide, the bigger leader you are. And I think that sometimes we get caught up in status. What's your status? What's your title? And I think when we get caught up in titles, we miss out on what a true leader really is. I find often that when people are in high-powered titles, people assume that they're going to be a leader. They assume at the level that they're going to respond, and they assume a lot of things. And I think now where we are in this time and place, it's time to let those titles and those labels go by the wayside and begin to see things honestly. I'm a big proponent of seeing through things, finding clarity, and responding authentically. I feel that there's never been a more important time to recognize the leader in yourself, to understand that you don't need a role model. You don't need to have someone around that's going to tell you what to do. You need to find that within yourself. And I find it very interesting because I think if we all take a few minutes, if we all take a few days, if we all take the time that we have to find our internal leader, we will be rich. It's kind of like that concept of teaching somebody to fish versus to give them a fish. I find that when we give somebody a leader that they can follow, that's great. But what about letting them find and experience for their own self the leader within? And I love the fact that Suzi's new book, Build Your Leader Identity. Build Your Leader Identity is so neat because it's not about exactly where you are in the corporation or in your own company or if you're at your home. It doesn't matter. It's about you leading every day. And let me give a good example that really resonates with myself and I believe will resonate with you. Every single second of the day, we have the chance to step up to the plate and be the leader that we were crowned to be, I think, throughout our life. And I do believe that leadership skills are learned, but I believe that it's an inherent. There's an inherent types of genes, and I'm not necessarily saying that there's a medical science behind the leadership gene, but I'm saying that I believe that a lot of us have those predispositions where we have that leader within ourselves when we feel that way, and it's about honing our skills and finding our true self. However, you don't have to be the vice president of a company or the president of a company. You don't have to be the creator of a corporation. You can lead by example in everything you do. Recently, I was walking down the street and I saw some trash on the ground. Somebody had thought it was a good idea to throw all of their bag of food from a nearby fast food restaurant and their shake and everything else all over the ground. And I was not raised that way, nor do I agree with that. However, I'm not just going to walk past that. Walk on past. No, I'm going to do my best to pick up most of it. I didn't have a paper towel or anything, so I picked up the bag of food and everything I could that didn't have all that sugary ice cream, whatever that was, in the cup. And I brought it to a nearby trash can, and then I threw it away. And I didn't have I wasn't grimacing, I wasn't angry, I just did what I thought I needed to do. I had no idea that people were watching me. I had no idea that there were about 7 to 10 people watching me on the side of the street. And they didn't say anything. They didn't do anything, but they looked at me. And I saw 3 or 4 people smile. And I realized that I just was a leader. And I'm betting that at least 1 or 2 of those people in that group, the next time they walk by a situation like that, one of those people, if not more, will pick up that trash. And that's a simple example, but it's true. You can lead in various ways with various people every day of your life. Even if you are the CEO, you can lead your corporation. If you're a mom, you can lead the kids. You can help lead the household. Think about it. If you're a student, you can help lead other students and help people find their true calling. Help people be able to be and be more comfortable being really, right? Isn't that what we're doing, is being? But being truly authentic. I find it interesting because we all can be that leader. We all have the power within. And I find it very cool how some people, for the most part, step up to the plate and realize that, but realizing it in a compassionate manner. Because you can bark orders, but barking orders does not mean that you're a leader. But you don't even have to be in a position to bark orders to be a leader. You can change the world. You can change the outlook. You can help a child. You can help adults. You can help people find their true calling. You can. I know it. I know you can. And I think that it's interesting when we apply certain knowledge to our lives and realize that it is about personal awareness, about allowing ourselves to show emotion and not to feel bad about it. It's okay to be real. That's what we want. We want real. I didn't say raw, but we want real. Being real and being authentic is truly what this lifetime has been destined for you to learn. No more, no less. Because finding your true, authentic self in this lifetime is the reason for the journey. Because when you really think about it, Suzi tapped on something that's really way deeper than just societal leadership or political leadership. But she brought about the fact that you can be a leader within. And isn't it true, and I know some people might say it's not, but I completely concur, and all my writings and all my teachings and all the therapy that I help with my patients support this, is that the most important relationship that you will ever have in your entire life is with yourself. The most important relationship you'll ever have in your entire life is with yourself. I know, wow, right? Who'd have thunk it? And every relationship that you have outside of yourself resonates and is defined and populates off the relationship you have with yourself. So every relationship that you have outside of you is directly related to the relationship you have with you. I know. Can you believe it? I know. It's true. The way we directly think about ourselves and the way we feel about ourselves directly relates to how we treat other people. That direct reflection shows up in every conversation, in every communication, in every email, in every text message, in every thought we have. And it's interesting because when we begin to find the leader within, when you begin to find your leader within, you realize certain aspects. You realize that there are things about you that you might want to change. There are things about you that you love. There are things about you that you find endearing. And there are things about you that you actually almost can't stand. As you develop this leadership with you, inside of you, you become more and more authentic. As you become more and more authentic, the things you can't stand, you begin to deal with. If you can change, you change. But for the most part, you realize at the core what makes you do this, and you're able to work through it like an internal therapist. You realize that the reason why you do X, Y, Z is because you're fearful of whatever there is. And because of that fear, their fear causes you to react a certain way, to maybe be argumentative, to maybe not find a middle ground with some people, and maybe you choose to argue. But eventually, as you work on that leadership quotient within yourself, it challenges you and it challenges your belief system. And as you challenge that belief system, you change the system within. By the way, your belief system, as a child, was brought up, you were brought up, it was environmentally reactive, it was parent reactive. That belief system was created from what your parents told you, what your grandparents told you, whoever raised you, the environment that you were in, all these, everything that happened to you in the past. Did it work out? Did it not? Did you get scolded? Did you get praised? All of this directly relates to your belief system. And let me tell you one thing, a piece of advice. You can change your belief system at any time. When you're being a true leader inside and out, you lead with your belief system. You lead with your belief system because if you don't lead with your belief system, you are antithetical and leading antithetical to your beliefs, meaning that a lot of things don't work out very well. When you go antithetical to your beliefs, you disengage from the leadership portion, and it becomes more of an egotistical type movement. And I believe that you are way above that. And I think if we look at what we can do to make the leader within us stand out even more brilliant, even more bright, to be a light bearer, to help others find their true calling, to find their true life, to figure out what can better themselves, how they can better themselves, and better yet, what they can do to honestly live a true and authentically successful life. Once you're able to find that leader within yourself and harness that and work at your craft as a leader on a second-to-second basis, and you're able to love yourself, self-love, real love, okay? Because another piece of advice, you can't truly love another until you truly, honestly accept all assets and all parts of yourself and love yourself. Okay? Once you're able to do that, you're able to take it to the next level. And you're able to lead from every direction on every way, shape, and form. Not only do you lead at work, not only do you lead maybe in the PTA, maybe you lead in your men's organization that you belong to. Maybe you have a sponsee or sponsor. Maybe you're a sponsor for someone that's getting over drugs and alcohol, and you're able to help them impart knowledge and value to them. Maybe you speak at homeless shelters and help them figure out their next move, and maybe help them to figure out how to write a resume or to form different things so that they can have a better life. Maybe you're like me and you mentor students and help them learn different trades, but also in an environment that allows them to be successful, to feel safe, to feel happy, and to know that somebody really cares. What about Suzi? Suzi Skinner, she's helping the world figure out how to be a leader and what it means and how to be honest with yourself. How to find that inner leader and how to be able to lead from any title in any situation. And I believe how to harness that and how to find that and how to capture that within yourself, because I believe that we all have that leadership gene. I believe that to a degree, we can all at least lead ourselves down the right direction or up the right direction in a life that we're proud of, living authentically and honest to ourselves and to others. You know, I define a leader as being authentic, positive in nature, truth teller, a truth teller, and someone that you can get behind and believe in because they're authentic and they do the right thing and they show by example even when they don't think that anybody's watching. That's the key. That's from A to B. That's what matters. That's how you live your true life, is to lead and to do what's right when you don't think that anybody's watching, when nobody's watching, even when nobody's watching. That means that even when nobody can read your mind, you choose the right direction and you do what's right. That means that even at home with the blinds closed, you make the right choices. And that means that you can find within what's right. And you can look yourself in the mirror and say, I feel good about the choices that I've made because I made the right choices. And I did what's right. Check out AshleyBurgess.com, AshleyBurgess.com, my website. Get the latest blogs, the latest information, and the coolest shows out there. Check out my Twitter handle at Ashley Burgess. Also, I want to find out from you. I want to know how you're living your true life. I want to know how you're living authentically and how you live your true life. Go on and tweet me at Ashley Burgess, hashtag LYTL, at Ashley Burgess, hashtag LYTL, and let me know because I want to know, okay? Inquiring minds want to know. I want to know. And by the way, we got great shows for you coming up next and Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess. We'll be back this time. And well, you know. Be back this time in 3 shakes.